They threw a 50-year-old widow out of the only home she had ever known. So she walked into the wild with nothing but 8 goats and a dead husband's final story. But deep inside a hidden canyon, winter slowly began turning survival into a nightmare. Then one freezing night, something happened that nearly broke her forever. What happened next changed her life completely. Watch the full story till the end, and follow our page for more emotional Western stories. Before we start the story, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? The ranch door slammed so hard that dust fell from the old porch beam. Ada Whitaker did not move. The sound stayed inside her chest like something heavy had broken forever. Hot late summer sunlight covered the yard. The same yard she had crossed for 30 years suddenly felt strange now. Too bright, too empty, too cold. Her fingers tightened around the wooden walking staff in her hand. Marcus Whitaker stood in the doorway of the ranch house. He looked so much like his dead brother Owen. Same broad shoulders, same dark eyes. But Owen's kindness had never lived inside Marcus. In his hand was a clean stack of papers. "The deed is clear," Marcus said calmly. "Owen left nothing in your name. Land goes to blood. No anger, no shame. That somehow hurt worse." Behind him, Marcus's wife Lena stood quietly in the shadows of the house. Her hands twisted together nervously, but she never looked at Ada directly. Ada could have spoken. She could have reminded them that she had given 30 years to that ranch. She had worked beside Owen through storms and droughts. She had cooked for sick ranch hands, patched clothes by lantern light, cared for animals through freezing nights, and stayed beside Owen while sickness slowly stole his breath. But none of that mattered now. Not to Marcus, not to the law. Only ink mattered. Only signatures mattered. A widow's love meant nothing on paper. Near the barn, 3 ranch hands stood silently with their hats in their hands. Their faces were filled with shame. Only young Finn dared to look at her. His eyes looked sick with guilt. Ada looked away before pity could wound her even more. Then she heard the restless cries of the goats near the dry trough. Owen's goats. 8 desert goats stood together in the heat, ears twitching. Owen had loved those goats deeply. "They survive where other things die," he used to say proudly. "Watch them long enough, Ada, and they'll teach you how to live." Marcus stepped down from the porch. "The herd stays too," he said. That was the moment something inside Ada almost cracked. Slowly she turned toward him. 50 years lived in her bones, but there was still strength in her eyes that could stop a man from speaking. "The cattle can rot," she said quietly, "but the goats know my hand." Marcus hesitated. The goats were never important to him. They were Owen's strange obsession, not valuable ranch stock. Finally, he said nothing. Ada clicked her tongue softly. At once, the goats lifted their heads. Then, without another word, Ada turned away from the ranch forever. She carried only a blanket roll, a water skin, a little dried food, and her walking staff. Behind her came the sound of 8 pairs of hooves. She did not look back. Because if she looked back even once, 30 years of memories might drag her to the ground. By sunset, the ranch had become only a dark shape far behind her. and Ada Whitaker was no longer a rancher's wife. She was simply a woman walking west with 8 goats and nowhere left to go. 3 nights later, she remembered Owen's story. It had been told during a terrible storm years ago. Wind screamed through the cabin walls while Owen sharpened a knife beside the stove. "Beyond the cut-back cliffs," he had said quietly, "there's a hidden crack in the sandstone. Most people walk right past it, but inside there's water all year long. Trappers used it when winters got cruel." Ada had smiled back then. "Why never show it to me?" Owen had looked at her over the firelight. "Because some stories are saved for the day you truly need them." Now that story was all she had left. The journey became harder each day. The sun burned her neck. Her water grew low. The bread became hard as stone. The goats moved slower through the heat. At night she slept lightly beside dry creek beds, while cold stars hung sharp above her. By the 3rd day, hope itself had become thin. Then she felt it. Cool air. Not wind. Something colder drifting against her face. The goats noticed too. Two of them lifted their noses toward a sandstone hill covered in brush. Ada pushed through thorn bushes until scratches covered her sleeves. At first she saw nothing. Then sunlight shifted. A narrow black seam appeared in the rock. Her heartbeat quickened. She turned sideways and squeezed through the opening. Cool stone scraped her shoulders. The passage stayed narrow for several steps. Then suddenly it opened. Ada stopped breathing. The hidden canyon stood around her in silence. High sandstone walls protected the place from the outside world. A narrow line of blue sky showed far above. At the far end, clear water dripped slowly into a shallow pool. Green ferns clung to damp stone walls. One goat rushed forward to drink. Ada fell to her knees beside the pool. Her hands touched the cold water first, and she drank deeply. Cold water filled her chest like life itself. For a long moment she simply sat there trembling. "Owen," she whispered softly. Not as prayer, not as grief. Only his name. And somehow it felt like he had guided her there one final time. Autumn passed inside the hidden canyon. There was no beauty in it, only work. Ada gathered dry grass daily and stacked it high inside a small alcove in the rock wall. She searched for roots and bitter berries Owen had once taught her about. The goats became her entire world. She knew which goat pushed others aside for food, which one cried softly in its sleep, which one always drank first. At night the herd slept close beside her, their warmth surrounding her like living blankets. Then winter came. The first snowstorm arrived at dusk. By nightfall the outside world had turned white and violent. Wind slammed against the canyon walls with terrible force, but inside the hidden chamber the storm could only moan from far away. That night, Ada sat wrapped in her blanket with one hand resting on a goat's back. And she understood a terrible truth. Without this canyon, she would already be dead. Winter slowly became cruel beyond words. Food disappeared little by little. Ada mixed tiny amounts of flour with water and baked thin, tasteless cakes over weak fires. She cut dried meat into strips so tiny they barely looked real. Hunger stopped feeling like pain. It became a living thing sitting quietly beside her every day. The goats mattered more than her own stomach. Without them, there would be no milk later, Without them, she would truly be alone. The cold split the skin on her hands until they bled. Still, she worked. Silence became dangerous. Some days there was no sound at all beyond the canyon walls. No birds, no coyotes, nothing. And in that silence, memories attacked her. A warm bed, coffee steam in winter mornings, Owen laughing while goats chewed laundry from the line. For a few terrible moments, those memories felt close enough to touch. Ada forced herself back to reality every time. Count the goats, fix the fire, gather brush, survive. Because the past was now a locked house, and if she stayed inside those memories too long, she would die there. Then one afternoon, Finn arrived. Ada heard footsteps at the canyon entrance and instantly grabbed her staff. Finn stepped carefully inside carrying a burlap sack. Snow covered his boots. "He doesn't know I came," Finn said quietly. He did not need to say Marcus's name. "What did you bring?" Ada asked. "Flour, salt, some dried meat. Not much." "More than I had." Finn looked around the canyon in shock. He had expected to find her broken. Instead, he found her thinner, harder, but still standing. "You could come back," he said carefully. "I might find space in the bunkhouse." Ada looked at him until he lowered his eyes. "And when Marcus grows tired of my breathing?" she asked softly. Finn had no answer. Before leaving, he paused near the entrance. "Why didn't you break?" he asked. Ada looked past him toward the white, frozen plains. "Because breaking uses strength too." Finn stood silently for a moment. Then he pulled his hat lower and disappeared back into the storm. Deep winter became almost unbearable. One morning, a young goat could not stand. Its body shook violently. Ada wrapped the little animal inside her blanket and held it tightly against her chest through the entire night. She fed it water from her hands. "Stay," she whispered over and over. "Please stay." But by dawn, the little body had gone still. Ada sat frozen for a long time, holding the dead goat in silence. No tears came. The cold would have frozen them anyway. Finally, she carried the small body to the far end of the canyon and buried it beneath heavy stones. That evening, another storm sealed most of the canyon entrance with snow. The air inside became thin and hard to breathe. Panic exploded inside Ada. She attacked the drift with her staff, then with bare, bleeding hands. Hour after hour, she clawed snow away until finally a narrow opening appeared again. Fresh air slipped through. Ada collapsed against the stone wall, shaking with exhaustion. Now, she fully understood the canyon's rules. It could shelter her, but it could also kill her without mercy. Winter slowly changed her. The fear never disappeared completely, but she learned to live beside it, like hunger, like cold. One night, another young goat became sick. Ada wrapped it tightly against her chest again and stayed awake through the darkness. Outside, the storm screamed across the cliffs. Inside, she whispered softly to the trembling animal. When morning came, the goat finally lifted its head and cried weakly. Relief hit Ada so deeply it almost hurt. And for the first time, she realized Marcus had not taken everything from her. Something inside her was still alive. Then one morning, she heard it. Birdsong. Soft, distant, real. Ada froze. Winter had lasted so long that the sound felt impossible. Slowly, she stepped outside the canyon. Snow still covered parts of the plains, but dark earth appeared beneath melting patches. The sky finally looked alive again. The goats followed her carefully into the sunlight. Ada looked back once at the narrow canyon entrance. That hidden place had saved her life, but it had also changed her forever. The woman who entered there months ago no longer existed. That woman had still looked backward. This one did not. When spring finally settled across the land, Ada packed her few belongings and left the canyon. This time, she never once looked toward the old ranch. That life belonged to another world now, a world of papers, ownership, and men who believed love could be measured by law. Days later, she climbed a rocky hill and stopped. Below her stretched a small green valley. A clear stream ran through the middle. Fresh grass covered the banks. Cottonwood trees stood near the water. It was not grand land, but it was peaceful. The goats hurried downhill immediately. Ada followed slowly behind them. For the first time in many months, something inside her loosened. She began building at once. A lean-to beside the hill, a fire ring from stones, a small pen for the goats. Every movement felt steady, certain, as if her body already knew this place belonged to her. Some days later, a weathered old trapper appeared on a nearby ridge. He approached carefully and stopped a short distance away. "Hard winter," he said. Ada leaned on her staff. "It was a winter." The old man nodded slowly. "You alone out here?" Ada looked toward the goats grazing peacefully beside the stream, then at the shelter she had built with her own hands, then at the open valley glowing beneath the evening sun. "No," she said softly. "I am not." The trapper studied her for a moment. "Looks like you found your ground." Ada's eyes moved slowly across the valley. Then she answered quietly, "No." A faint warmth touched her tired face. "I made it." The trapper tipped his hat respectfully and walked away. Spring deepened. The goats grew strong again. Milk returned. Ada planted old vegetable seeds beside the stream. She learned where the wind blew hardest and where morning sunlight arrived first. Sometimes at sunset, she sat beside her fire watching the valley grow quiet around her. She rarely thought about Marcus anymore, not because she forgave him. Some wounds never asked for forgiveness. They only asked to be left behind. Winter had taken comfort from Ada, taken safety, taken ease, taken one small goat she had held against her chest through the darkness. But winter had failed to take her spirit, and at last Ada understood what home truly meant. Home was not a deed, not walls, not a porch, not a man's name. Home was the place where you could stand without asking permission. And in that quiet green valley beneath the endless western sky, Ada Whitaker finally began again. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way till the end. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. It really helps us a lot. If you want to watch more exciting stories like this, don't forget to subscribe our page right now. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is right now? And if this story touched your heart, please send some stars. Every single star gives us huge motivation to keep creating more amazing videos for you. See you in the next story. Take care of you, friends.